Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you guys for joining and taking the time to be with us. Welcome to Kaleido Tech Tuesday. We're going to talk about advanced protocol configurations. My name is Freddy Cáceres, and I'm a front-end developer at Kaleido. And there's also Binod on the call, which is our protocol lead on the team as well. So if you guys have any deep questions of what I'm about to talk, feel free to do them, and we should be able to answer them. So first of all, I'm going to give a little overview of what Kaleido is. Kaleido is a cross-cloud, multi-region, full-stack application. And what we mean by that is our goal as a platform is to be able to fast-forward every production that you guys want to do on related to blockchain, providing all the tools you guys might need to be able to have to go from a pilot to a production enterprise-grade application as fast as possible with the best quality possible. And we are focused on enterprise solutions, trying to make business networks as efficient as possible, providing different options of different tools like partnership with AWS or Azure to give you all the flexibility you guys might need to be able to kick these projects off as well. As I said before, our goal is to try to take POC projects to pilots and then to productions as fast as possible, and we provide support for all these three different levels, being with a lot of flexible packages for your needs, specific to your needs. One thing that we like to say a lot in Kaleido is that blockchain is only 5% of our platform or what the solution needs, and this is really visible in our platform in Kaleido. You'll have seen probably in different Tech Tuesday in the past, and you'll see in this one as well, how what a small percentage the blockchain actually takes in what this application is. There's a lot of tools that surround the blockchain that we have created to be able to support these kind of solutions and everything that they might need to be able to go fully into production. This is explaining a little bit more about that, all the full stack applications that we have, the B2B messaging, the on-chain registry data, API gateway connections to the nodes and to be able to communicate to the blockchain, and much more. This is an example of one of some clients that we have, so for you to be able to take the quality of our product and the kind of projects that we're leading. Companies as Pepsi, Unibank, Comgo, for supply chain, different industries as well, in the medical industry. And it's a great variety of companies and industries that have been able to find help in what we have developed in our platform because of how flexible it is as well. We're ISO certified, we provide 24/7 support as well. Again, focusing on what an enterprise really needs. We are making sure to provide all those kind of supports for this to be enterprise grade. Having said that, as I said before, there's a different kind of packages. We have a lot of variety in this area to be able to fit and right size whatever project you might have. Doesn't matter the size of it. We have from proof of concept all the way to production packages, be able to satisfy all these needs. Having said that, I'm gonna go ahead and start with the topic of today. So as I said before, we're gonna talk about the advanced protocol configurations. These configurations, these functionalities have been available for a long time, most of them from the APIs on Kaleido, but we have now made them available from the UI and our B2 experience in our new Qt experience. So what I'm gonna try to do today is take you through where you can configure them, where are they exposed on our new experience, and talk a little bit about the overview of what they represent and how can they be helpful for your projects moving on. So I'm just gonna assume that you guys are familiar with what the platform is, what Kaleido is. Hopefully you guys have seen the other Tech Tuesdays. If not, I'm gonna leave my email at the end of the call, and if you have any questions or things that you didn't understand or weren't familiar about the platform yet, feel free to contact me directly, and I'll be super happy to answer any questions you guys might have or schedule a call if necessary to go deep into it. So having said that, I'm gonna go ahead and go into a network that I created. I created it previously just to save a little bit of time, that I call Tech Tuesday. There is something important that I want to clarify first before I move forward, is that there's two types of advanced protocol configurations. There's ones that are set up at the environment level, and there's another ones that are set on the node level. And they are going to be completely different from each other in the ways they behave in the platform. And I'm going to explain why as I go forward with the presentation. So having said that, I'm going to go ahead and create the environment. I'm going to call it, we're going to select the protocol. We're going to do this on Ethereum. And I'm going to call it production prod with a multi-region cloud-only deployment option. And now being on this step, this is the important step for our topic today. As you can see here in the bottom side of the panel, there is an option for the advanced settings. And as I said, it's optional. Most of the users won't probably need to modify these configurations, but we want to be as flexible as possible and satisfy as many needs as we can through the platform. So we're gonna, you need to open this and it's gonna display the three different options that you guys have. There is something really important to notice here is that these parameters, these advanced settings configurations can only be configured at the creation of the environment. Once the environment is created, there's no way to come back and modify these configurations. So this is the big difference between these ones and the node configurations. For these ones, at the environment level, you can modify three things. The first one is the chain ID. This is a random number that Kaleido generates by default that gives your chain its unique ID. But sometimes, depending on some use cases, for example, I'm trying to give you an example of where we have seen this in the past, where some clients might want to migrate a chain into Kaleido where they had already developed some application for it. And they were doing something like externally signed transactions, for example, where the ID of the chain is required to sign the transactions. And then once they want to move into Kaleido, they might want to have a custom chain ID, using the same chain ID that they had on their previous platform, on the previous chain, to be able to maintain all that logic that they have developed on their application. So that's one use case. There's many different reasons why you might want to do this, but most of the use cases, most of our clients will never have to touch this. But we provide the option for you to be able to set up a custom chain ID. The second parameter that you can configure from here is the block period. This is more self-explanatory, hopefully. It's the period of time that you want for every block to be mined. We usually, by default, on Kaleido, we have a 5-second block period. There is, we provide the option to modify this between 5 to 10 seconds in POA or 5 to 15 seconds on IBFT, if I'm correctly, and Bnode can correct me if that's wrong. But we provide the option of those parameters. That's what we have tested, and we can guarantee the quality of the chain throughout that range. There's a lot of different reasons why you might want to do this, and this is really depending on your use case. It's really specific to your use case. It depends on it varies on a lot of different aspects, on a lot of different points, as the node size, the size of the transactions that you guys are generating, if it's multi-region or not, and the amount of transactions or throughput that you have on your application. So those are kind of the reasons why you might want to have a custom time block period. For example, we put here on the description that the lower block times could reduce latency. You're gonna mine blocks faster, but this is also, as I said, depending on your situation. But we provide the option for you to be able to adjust this to whatever you might want. Then the last part is the pre-funded accounts. Every time that you create an environment, Kaleido by default generates 1 billion Ether, will generate an Ether pool that will have 1 billion Ether automatically created by Kaleido for you to be able to fund later on to other accounts and be able to satisfy any needs you might have using this Ether inside of Kaleido. In addition to that, we provide the option of having some pre-funded accounts with some balance to it. And this balance will be in addition to the already 1 billion created Ethers that was provided automatically by Kaleido. It's important to notice here, it's kind of obvious this being a private network, but I just wanted to let that very clear, is that this is Ether related to the private network. It is only valuable inside of Kaleido, but it means it is it's worth nothing outside of Kaleido. It's not the Ether that you guys see on the mainnet. So this is only relevant to your environment, to your blockchain. We provide the option of set, you just need a valid Ether address, and you will have to input a balance into it, and it will be pre-funded once the environment is created. And again, once this is created, you can come back and modify this. So just for the sake of the presentation, I'm gonna change the block period to 7, and I'm gonna finish the creation of this environment. And the Ether address can be empty. Having taken it out, it should be able to work. And now we have our environment created. The last thing that we have to do is to create our node to be able to bring this environment to life. Now, on the creation of the node, we're gonna give it a name called main. There's gonna be a second step. Here, you guys can see all the configurations that you can attach to the node and then to be able to be applied to that node. Here, there is a different kind of configurations. We have the cloud configurations, which is the key store, backup store, lock stream, network control that we have talked about in past Tech Tuesdays already. We also have the application firewall configuration. We also have talked about this in the past. And the newest addition to this is the protocol configurations. And this is what we're gonna talk about now. As I said before, the big difference within these configurations and environment level configurations is that they could either be attached while we create the node. If we had already created a protocol configuration, we could have selected here and attach it to the node when it is being created, and it will be applied from the start of that node. But since we don't have any configurations created yet, we won't be able to touch it now, but we will be able to do it after the node is created, and I'm gonna explain how you can do that. So we're gonna ignore this step for now. We're gonna go select the size of the node. We're gonna get a small size for the node. And with that done, the node is being created. I wanna come back and demonstrate that the block period of our chain is gonna be 7 seconds because we modified that while we were creating the environment, and we're stuck with this block period from now on. We can't change this anymore. But I wanted to prove that that was actually set up on the environment. Now, while the node gets started, we're gonna go ahead and create one protocol configurations that we can later on attach to the node. So in order to create protocol configurations, you can find that inside of the blockchain tab on manage resources. These are gonna be my resources that I can act on behalf on. And in order to create that, we're gonna come here. Since I have no configurations, this is all I can see. And we're gonna be able to add a new configuration. Let's call it test. Name doesn't really matter. And it's only a 2-step process. Now here we see a lot of different parameters. I'm gonna try to explain them a little bit of how you can use them and what they mean. This is all you need to be able to create a protocol configuration, all the options that we provide for you to be able to modify them. So the first thing that you're gonna see is the gas price. You can modify the gas price that is going to be used on that specific node from here. By default, on Kaleido, the gas price is 0. We have found that this is the most useful for most of the use cases that we have seen in our clients, where it is not, you don't require any Ether to be able to do and generate any transactions inside of the network. For some clients, for some reasons, they might want to modify this and require the accounts that generate the transactions to have some Ethers pre-funded or funded after creation of the environment through the Ether pool to be able to generate these transactions. And if that's the case, this is the place to set up a price for that gas. We also have a target gas limit, and this is for us to be able to cap the amount of transactions per block. And for this to be able to be sustainable, this should have a gas limit. You can't, and this is the default number of gas limit on Kaleido. This, as I said, assure us and maintains the quality of the chains, having a cap limit of transactions per block. If you want it to be for this to be smaller or bigger, depending on your case, where you might want to have a lot of transactions per blocks, you will need to change this using this configuration. Now, the next configuration that you can modify is the course origin host. Hopefully this is self-explanatory. It is the list of origins that are allowed to access the RPC and WebSocket connections endpoints on your nodes. By default, every single origin is allowed to communicate to the nodes. But if you wanted to modify this to have to be for your nodes only to be able to accept calls from a specific origin, this is the place to do this. You can select as many as you want. Something important to notice here to prevent future mistakes is that once you change this configuration and don't allow any all the origins to communicate to the RPC and only your custom ones, it is important to make sure that you also add the console endpoints for the UI to be able to communicate to those nodes. There's different functionalities in the UI that we show and we provide for you in our console of Kaleido that require a communication to those nodes. So if this configuration is changed and you don't allow these origins to communicate to your nodes, you're gonna find that you're gonna have a lot of functionalities inside of the platform, inside of the UI, that doesn't work anymore. So it is important if you want to keep the functionalities and want to be able to keep using the console of Kaleido, it's important to add those origins as an option here as well. So that's something that we find kind of common, and it makes sense for users not to be able to realize that. After that, then we have the get block repository. This is something that I'm gonna demonstrate in a second. You can modify the repository of the logs on your node. By default, every time that you create a new node, it will be set to debug mode for you to. It's the most comfortable thing to have while you're developing, to have as much information as you need to be able to debug any issues that you're facing. But if you wanted to, if you're already on production, or if you want to be able to for this to be more silent, you can modify this from here. Or you just want to have errors or info or one, this is the place to do this. So we're gonna leave it at info right now. Then we're gonna have the mode. This is the garbage collection mode. This is an important feature. We have found one of the most common ones out of our protocol configurations. And this is in case you want to have a full history, to be able to access the full history of the chain from that node. By default, it is set to full, but if you wanted the whole history of the blockchain, you will need to set this to archive. And something important to notice here is that for this to be able to work, you must have a large size node for this to be able to work. It's one of the requirements of this configuration, and it's because you need enough resources to be able to generate that full history of the chain. We also can set up the sync mode if you want it to be full, fast, and light. The last set of configurations are the REST API gateways. These are, as the name says, specific to the communication to the gateway API through this node. There's a lot of different configurations that you can set from here, but we're gonna have, if you want to know more about this, please sing into our next Tech Tuesday next week. This will be the topic of the call. There's a lot to talk about this, so it's just gonna be a full day on this on next week. And as in every creation step that we have, I think, in the platform, we also provide the option for you to have a little bit more information if you wanted to, and this will link you into the documentation where it's explaining more detail everything that I have explained so far in the presentation. So the next thing after, if you are familiarized with all the other configurations in the platform, you will need to create the configuration, but it is yet not applied to any node on the environment. So once it is created, you can attach it to any node or any runtime, depending on what kind of configuration it is. From here, you attach it, but it is still not applied to the node. In order for a new configuration to be applied to a node after it has been created, after the node has already been created and is running, the node needs to be reset, and this will apply any new configuration that has been attached to it. So I just attach a new configuration to my main node, and if I wanted to apply it, I will come here and apply that configuration. This will reset my node, and after the node is reset and restarted, the new configuration will be applied. In order to save some time, I'm not gonna do this because it takes some time for the node to reset, but I'm going to show what this node currently has as a configuration. As I said, every time that you create a node, by default, it is set to debug mode, where it shows as much information in the logs as possible, one of the options. And you can see that here in the logs where you have debug, info, and you have all the information required for you to be able to debug and be on development. Now, we're going to go into a different network where I had already created a protocol configuration where the get log repository was set to info, and I had already applied it to my node. And we're going to see how those logs differ from the ones that I had just shown. Now you can only see the info logs of that node. So I think with this, I'm going to conclude most of the presentations of the things that I wanted to talk about. This was a rather short presentation compared to other Tech Tuesdays. But we want to open for questions if you guys might have anything. As I said, there's also other colleagues from Kaleido inside of the call that should be able to answer any deep protocol questions in case you guys have something that you didn't understand or how this can benefit your project as well. So I don't know if in the chat there was any questions.
I didn't see any questions, but happy to take any questions that folks might have.
Yeah, I'm also gonna leave my email inside of the chat if I can find a way to send a message. Leave my email in the chat. Yeah, I just left my email in the chat for you to be able to contact me if you guys, if there's something you didn't understand or you want to know a little bit more about Kaleido. Happy to take on that.
Yeah, I think you may have sent it only to the panelists.
Oh, to panelists,
I sent it to everyone.
Thank you, Ida.
No problem.
Yeah, I think I always do that. I don't know why is that set to the default. So there's two questions, I think. In the Q&A.
Oh, okay. I see them now. Okay. So the first one is how to pass client-specific arguments. So I guess the question is related to different providers, I guess, if it's Besu versus if it's Geth or Quorum. So currently we have a set of parameters which are mainly common to all the clients. But if you have any specific arguments that you need customization, we are happy to talk about that based on the use case. Do reach out to us at support@kaleido.io, and with your environment and node in it, or actually if you create a ticket from wherever you are in the environment or the node, it will give us all the coordinates we need, and then we can definitely talk about which configs you would want to customize. If you have any specific instances or examples, it would be great to hear that, and then I can take that as input when we are talking about how to enhance this.
Perfect.
Is there a follow-up? Do you have any client-specific arguments at this time?
Perfect. Maybe while Mustafa answers that or has extra information, we can take on the second one.
Sure. So if the second question is, if the gas price is set to 0, how does target gas limit come into play? Because all the contract invocations would always require zero gas. That's a great question. So one thing that, as this question already states, is in Kaleido we operate zero gas networks. Zero gas price networks. What that means basically is that there is no ether to be supplied when submitting a transaction. So there's no gas price when submitting these transactions, but every block has a target gas limit in terms of how many transactions can be packed into the block. Now, as you're aware, even though the gas price is zero, every transaction or contract invocation takes a certain amount of gas depending on all the operations that are executed by the contract or the transaction. And each transaction has a consumption of a set amount of gas. Now, when these transactions are being mined into blocks, the block has a certain limit, upper limit in terms of how much gas it will accommodate when these transactions are packed into the block. So we don't want an arbitrarily high limit, basically because there are bounds to how much CPU is required to mine transactions. So the gas limit basically sets an upper bound aside from the transaction pool queue sizes, how many transactions can be packed into the block.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here because that's always something that I struggle with as well. So that's a great question. And if I can provide a little analogy to it, it's for me, it's easier to understand it, thinking that you can think of this like a car, like a usual gas that you need for your car to ride. Even if the gas is free, your car still needs a certain amount of gas to be able to move to a certain place. So what we're doing in Kaleido in a private network, we provide gas-free world where you don't need to pay to use gas, but you're still gonna use some amount of gas to be able to move your car around. And this is what we said with the gas target limit. It's a way for us to limit the amount of gas that you're gonna be able to spend, even if you're not gonna pay for it. Kind of.
And it's mainly an inherent property of the EVM to require gas when executing transactions or contract related operations. And that's the reason why a quantity of gas needs to be supplied when invoking transactions or when submitting contract creation requests.
Yeah.
Does that answer the question, Ganesh? Okay, so there's a follow-up question. Can I use initial Ether pools to recharge my members like a prepaid recharge wallets? Is that a pattern you have seen in your experience? Definitely, and that's exactly the intended use for Ether pools. So the intent is to set up your environment with a bunch of well-known addresses that you want to fund. And by default, we have the account on the monitor node funded with 1 billion Ether. And you're welcome to add more accounts depending on how you have your wallets and whatnot set up. And the use case or the typical pattern of usage for these pre-funded accounts is to transfer Ether balance from one of these pre-funded accounts to your other wallets, which may exist on different nodes or some of the other wallets that Kaleido supports. So that's exactly the reason why you want to have Ether pools.
I think there are no more questions. So yeah, no, thanks to you guys for joining, and always keep coming back to our Tech Tuesday. Hopefully next Tuesday is going to be awesome as well. Not I think we can conclude.
Yep, looks like it. Great, so, thanks everyone. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you all. And I left my email, as I said, on the chat for anybody. If anybody has extra questions, reach out to me. Feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be happy to give a follow up to that. So I said that. Thank you all, and hope to see you guys in the next week.